is I, Dr. Eggman. This is my Halloween costume that I got to wear to Chaz's corporate Halloween party. I saw it at Spirit Halloween and I could not resist. Chaz doesn't have a costume yet, so if he can't think of one, he may wear this. And I'll have to come up with something else. But that's okay, I have lots of old costumes I can wear, he does not. So I guess this could be a costume for either of us. I'm actually gonna free my hands from these as well, because they're kind of like too big. I got a medium because that was what was available, and unfortunately, but I'm definitely a small. So this month, for your bonus video, my patrons submitted their topics and voted, and the winning topic was to talk about the Pokemon Original Series anime, which is technically the first 5 seasons, season 1 through season 5. We do get 2 recurring submissions every month. One is to talk about the original series, and one is to talk about the Indigo League through Advanced. So depending on how long I can go, we may roll that into this video as well, because for the sake of redundancy, I don't put both on the poll, I only put one each month. So that topic is technically part of this as well. So as far as the anime goes, I unfortunately did not have the ability to rewatch the first 5 seasons this month in preparation for this video. For a bonus video topic, it's really a little bit too big a topic, because I think it would be hard for me under normal circumstances, even if it was my full-time job making these bonus videos. I think it would be hard to watch 5 seasons of a show in a month, even if that was the case. So I didn't rewatch anything for this video, and in fact, when I was looking at the episode lists for each season, I realized that I probably didn't actually watch most of this when it came out either. I saw a lot of season 1, but due to circumstances that I guess I'll go into later, I was not able to see basically any of the Johto seasons. I had a big gap from the end of season 1 towards the end of the advanced seasons, which is when I started watching it again. And that had primarily to do with the time slot in which it aired, which really limited my ability to see it for a good chunk of the time that it was airing. So I don't mean to disappoint, but I haven't seen a lot of the seasons that this topic is supposed to be about at all. So I'll do my best with this and talk about what I have seen, and then I'll go into the reasons why I didn't see the rest of it. So in season 1, it was very easy to watch Pokemon. It was really popular, so not only was it airing on TV at multiple time slots during the day, everybody had the VHS tapes. So we had VHS tapes of it because my sister and I both liked it. So we had several tapes from the first season that we would watch over and over and over again. And then my friends would each also have a good chunk of the tapes. So between all of us, we probably had more or less the whole season on VHS. So at our friends' houses, we would watch the tapes. At our house, we would watch the tapes. And then we would watch it airing on TV on weekends. I think it aired after school as well, so it was very easy to catch episodes of Pokemon. Actually, my neighbor's parents used to have it scheduled, so they would tell their kids when the show was on, so we would all stop what we were doing and go watch Pokemon when a new episode came out. So the episodes that we had on tape, I remember the strongest because we watched them over and over again to the point of memorization. And then I've rewatched it in its entirety a couple of times since then, either for videos or just because I wanted to. So then when we get into the Orange Islands and the Johto stuff, my older sister outgrew Pokemon. So she was 18 months older than me and decided, I guess by the time we were in she decided by the time she was in 3rd grade that she was too old for Pokemon. So it became much harder to watch Pokemon in my house because we no longer got tapes. If there was anything that my sister and I both liked, we would get tapes of it. Our dad would just pick us up tapes to watch at his house or things like that. But if only I liked it, then there was basically no way I could acquire a tape of it. It had to be something my sister and I both liked. And then in addition to that, watching it live became out of the question as well, because we more or less had to always watch TV together, especially in the mornings. My mom went back to school to get a teaching certificate around this time, and so we would always be watched by a babysitter in the morning, and we would have about an hour after getting ready for school, or maybe 30 minutes or something each morning, where we would sit with the babysitter and watch something on TV. And at this time I checked, and Pokemon had begun airing only in the mornings. So because my sister didn't like it, and we had to watch TV together, I guess my sister kind of like made it a point to dislike intentionally anything that I liked, to make it impossible for me to be happy. So, and because we could not agree on watching it, we had to watch something else that we could both agree on. And so we watched basically every episode of the Tarzan animated series in syndication. I would have rather been watching Pokemon. I still liked Pokemon during this time. I still played the games, I still had the cards, and mostly I experienced this series, like the Orange Islands and Johto, through chapter books. So I had a few chapter books, which were the first chapter books I ever read because Pokemon taught me how to read. So that was how I knew what was happening in the Pokemon anime in the seasons that I couldn't watch. And then later I went online and read like discussions about these seasons. So there's some things that I gleaned from just reading what people were saying about them. And I thought, based on knowing stuff about these seasons of the anime, that I actually had seen it and maybe just didn't remember. But when I was looking at the episode list, I realized I actually hadn't seen any of it. So if I've had an opinion in the past about these seasons of the anime, I most likely was just repeating something that I read online. I don't think I've seen any of the Johto seasons of the show. When I got to high school, I think, I found a box set of the Master Quest season, which I may still have. Those are the like 6 episodes of Master Quest that were in that box set. Maybe 9 episodes. I have to check. Those are the only ones that I've seen of Master Quest. Pokemon aired in the mornings from the Gen 2 stuff up to almost the end of Gen 3. And then at some point towards the end of the Advance arc, it started airing after school, so I could start watching it again. So I would run up. I lived at the top of a hill, and my middle school was at the bottom of the hill. To get home quickly, like to beat my sister home and make sure that I could watch the show when I was the only one in the house, I would race up the hill after school every day, and I would be able to catch an episode of Advance that way. It was always on after Divorce Court for some reason. I think it was like the start of a kid's programming block and the end of whatever was on in the afternoon for unemployed adults. So I would have to watch a little bit of Divorce Court and about 1 million commercials for Head On, apply directly to the forehead. And then I would get to watch some episodes of Advance. Once the voice actors were fired for the dub at the end of, it was either the start or the end of the Battle Frontier season, that was when I totally stopped watching. I was very loyal to what the character sounded like, and I was not okay with them firing all the voice actors, and that was where I just totally got off watching the anime. And from that point on, I pretty much only knew it through internet discourse. So I kind of knew what was happening in the show from that point on, but I haven't watched any of it. So that won't leave me with very much to talk about in this video, but I will talk a little bit about at least season 1 of the anime and episodes that were particularly memorable and great. I've talked about some of these in videos in the past, but I think there's still more to say about it than I've talked about before. So episodes 1 through 6 of the first season of Pokemon we had on tape, and I kept those tapes for a very long time, but I recently, I think, got rid of them because they take up a lot of space. Rewatching the first season of the show as an adult, I think it really holds up. I think it's still entertaining to watch. It's hard to say because I'm very biased, because I loved the show so much that perhaps some of my high estimation of it as an adult comes from an inescapable memory of really enjoying it when it first came out. But there are some shows that you rewatch as an adult and you're like, wow, I'm not sure what I liked about this as a kid. Pokemon, at least the first season, is not one of those shows. I think season 1 in particular has some good qualities, partially because they were establishing the series at that point. There was no existing audience, and they had no concept in mind that multiple generations of kids would be watching the show. So they put a lot of effort into establishing the Pokemon world, the characters, and having entertaining storylines in each episode. As a kid, the characters that I liked the most on the show were actually the Pokemon themselves, and as an adult watching it, my favorite characters are Team Rocket. I do think that they at least designed Team Rocket to kind of be an audience surrogate for the adults that would watch with their kids. There's a lot of fourth wall breaking and jokes about the show in the show, where it's not taking itself super seriously, and I think Team Rocket are the most entertaining characters from an adult's perspective. But the tone of the show, at least in this season, is very self-aware and silly and not very serious. There are episodes that are meant to be more actiony and more conflict heavy, but the show overall is pretty silly. Additionally, the show has many more culturally Japanese elements in the first season than it does in later seasons, because it was at that point designed only for a local Japanese audience. There weren't any thoughts when they were making the first season of any other countries around the world watching the show, which I think also kind of gives it a lot more personality. And as much as people dislike 4Kids for some of their other dubs, I think they did a pretty good job with the Pokemon anime. The voices are quite close in the first season between the Japanese voice actors and the English voice actors, and I think the tone of the show is preserved pretty well. Jelly donuts aside, I do think that they didn't need to necessarily as heavily adapt some of the cultural stuff as they did, and I say that as a kid that watched it growing up and found those things interesting. But looking at some of the struggles that other anime adaptations have had in the US, I think that perhaps culturally the US, outside of just me, was not ready for things that were not culturally American. I learned a lot about this from listening to 4Kids Flashback, which is a podcast by Tara Sands and Steve Yurko. Tara Sands was one of the voice actors working on the show, the 4Kids dub. And there's a lot of background information I didn't know about adaptation in this podcast and the kinds of successes and failures that they had as a company in adapting and localizing things. I think that there was a very passionate but small contingent of anime fans that were very interested in what the original would have been like. But in the podcast, they talk about that they did release some uncut versions of Yu-Gi-Oh, for example, with the original Japanese audio, and those did not sell very well. So I think perhaps demand was just not there outside of me for seeing more of the Japanese elements of the show and their unchanged and unadapted form. I think the strengths of the show is that it was a well-made show to begin with. It was pretty well animated, relatively high budget for a 90s show in Japan, and I think the writing was actually quite good. They were able to capture in the show what was so appealing about Pokemon as a concept. You think about how successful it was. A lot of it really hinged on the success of the anime, at least in the 90s. In Japan, Pokemon started as an RPG, but here we got the anime first. And I think the anime being the thing that introduced kids in the 90s to Pokemon is what made it a success. The show actually kind of doubles as an instructional or educational tool to teach children about the mechanics of the game. More or less, each of the Gen 1 mechanics gets an episode explaining how it works. For example, Metapod using Harden and not having any attack moves. Charizard not obeying Ash until he has enough gym badges. Pikachu not being able to damage Brock's ground types with electricity. Magikarp being useless, but then evolving into the super powerful Gyarados. Status moves like Jigglypuff using Sing and putting Pokemon to sleep. And even solutions to puzzles in the games got entire episodes centered around them, like needing to wake up Snorlax with the Pokeflute. You could learn these things by playing the games, but having the anime act as these entertaining parables was a good way for kids to learn them. Sometimes I'm surprised when I talk to people who are younger than me, who didn't grow up with the show, and they don't all have all the type matchups memorized. I feel like I learned all of the type matchups by heart just from watching the show and reading the guidebooks, even before I played a single game. The anime was not always 100% accurate to the games. It did take some liberties sometimes or just get stuff wrong, but it was close enough that the big, memorable lessons from it stuck with me and did help me when I went to go play the games. Without the anime, I doubt that Pokemon as an RPG would have caught on here the way that it did. Kids were not used to RPGs, and the show gave us kind of a leg up on becoming familiar with Pokemon as a concept and it capturing our imaginations before we ever tried the games and encountered the RPG systems in them and all of the friction that comes with that. The episodes that stick with me the most are the ones that I had a strong emotional reaction to growing up. Charmander, for example. I loved Charmander as a kid. I thought that its backstory about it being mistreated and neglected resonated with me as a kid who was bullied and neglected too. It's a cliche now that everyone my own age is obsessed with Charizard, but I do think that the anime has a lot to do with that. A lot of Charizard's popularity comes not just from it looking like a cool big dragon that breathes fire, but also from the fact that it starts out as Charmander, and Charmander has this story of being picked on and put down, and we can see ourselves in Charmander. So Charizard really became kind of an aspirational symbol to some people who grew up feeling like Charmander, but wanted to become a big, strong, powerful, cool dragon when they grew up. As a kid, I think I didn't actually like the human characters all that much because I was such a big animal person. But when I got a little bit older, like middle school age, I really started to resonate with Misty. Princess versus Princess is an episode that I've talked about in the past. It's the episode where Misty battles in the Girls' Day festival to try and win a set of... And her motivation for doing that is that she always had like broken, leftover, hand-me-down dolls from her older sisters and really wanted her own set. So I felt very seen by an episode as the younger sister in my own family. I had to make do with a lot of scraps and hand-me-downs as well. Misty also just has a lot of dimension for a female character from the time period in kids' TV. Like, she was tomboyish, but still had this nurturing aspect where she wanted to take care of all of the Pokemon, like Togepi. It's funny to think, looking back on it, that she is kind of like a trope or an archetype from anime, but so whereas in Japan, her character was actually not as unique as it ended up being in the US, where we didn't get a lot of those archetypes or tropes in our media. So Bye Bye Butterfree is one of the most memorable episodes of the show. I think it was really novel because, again, for American children's television, it was really uncommon to have storylines that span multiple episodes, let alone these character arcs. We saw Ash catch Caterpie as his first ever Pokemon. Then we saw Caterpie work to overcome its fear and become a Metapod, and then we saw Metapod evolve into Butterfree and how proud Ash was and how excited he was. So we had this arc going on where both characters kind of impacted each other, all culminating in this episode where Ash has to say goodbye to Butterfree. I think that was really unique. I think the show not only trusted kids to pay attention to things like that, but also to like stick around and see these storylines through. And I think what's kind of amazing about Bye Bye Butterfree is like that even if you haven't seen all of the episodes of Caterpie and Metapod, it's still kind of an impactful episode. There's really no point of comparison for it for anything else on TV for my generation, I think. I think you would see that sort of thing in like book series for kids, but not TV shows. When you hear millennials look back on Pokemania, for the most part it was the show that had the biggest impact on us. It's kind of funny to think about it that way because it doesn't seem true these days. The anime kind of seems like a relatively small part of the overall franchise now, at least in terms of like popular culture and relevance. Culture itself has changed a lot. In the streaming era, I think that it's not as common for all kids to just be watching a TV show, like the same show all at the same time, the way that we all watch Pokemon. There are still things that catch on in kids' TV, mostly with really young kids like Bluey, but I think people for the most part just watch shows differently now than they used to. So having everyone be into the same thing at the same time from a TV show is not very common in any age range. Whereas something like the mobile games or the card game, those, you know, in the case of Pokemon Go anyway, are kind of like social things that people all do in a big group together. People gather at the card shops and have social circles that revolve around the trading cards and going to parties and events based on the TCG. Same with Pokemon Go. So I think those have a bigger cultural impact now than something like the TV show that is maybe still watched by one age range, but not in the same numbers or ubiquity as it used to be. So from Johto onwards, I really didn't have the opportunity to watch any of the show. I mostly experienced those storylines in books. I had a book about the Orange Islands, which was the first chapter book that I ever read, and that was really the only thing I knew about the Orange Islands seasons. I remember also having like a Johto era coloring book, but I didn't actually get to watch any of those episodes. Things like video games were something that I just had more control over, especially the mobile games, where I didn't need to share a TV with anybody in my household. I could just have my own personal Game Boy that I always had access to. Sorry if this one feels a little bit short and like devoid of information. It's kind of hard to devote brain space to this month. With Legends ZA out, I've been devoting all of my time to Legends ZA. So I guess I can kind of just throw that on to the end here. Sorry. I won't talk about too much because I know not everybody has finished the game yet. In fact, I have not finished the game yet. Throughout the game, you get different ranks in the Royale. What is it called? And I am currently rank B, so I just reached rank B today. So that should give you an idea if you finish the game where I am at in the game. There's quite a few new things I still haven't seen yet that I have already had spoiled for me. Thanks, YouTube thumbnails, which I will not repeat here. I do think my assessment of the games so far, I haven't finished it, so grain of salt. My assessment of the games in last month's bonus video where I watched all the trailers and tried to compare it to Legends Arceus, I think a lot of the things I was concerned about being missing are in fact missing. The good news is I'm still enjoying the game, so it ends up being a very unique experience from Arceus, but in a way that is still very fun in its own right. My ideal Pokemon game would probably be to combine the two together, to take the combat from this game and the exploration and environments from Arceus and combine them together. But I think that that is just outside of the scope of what Pokemon is capable of being right now. And I get that people are frustrated by that. I'm kind of frustrated by that, but you know, I am enjoying ZA for what it is. I think that the storytelling is quite good. It's very episodic, at least up through most of the game, but I do like each of the characters. They're very distinct. The game kind of has a good sense of humor. I've laughed at several things. The customization, like the outfits you can put together, they're like almost exactly where I would want them to be, but not quite. Like in a perfect world, you would just be able to pick the colors of anything from a color picker and have a wider variety of stuff, not just kind of like the same things with different patterns and textures on them. And I also understand why they can't give us dresses because of the running and jumping and etc. that we're doing. It's hard to have a game about fashion and not be able to wear any dresses. Give us dresses, you cowards. I found a shiny Alpha Ralts yesterday. I was in a battle zone adjacent to a wild area, and I heard the shiny noise go off, and I saved the game, and then I was like, where the heck is it? So I left, I went into the adjacent wild area, I ran around and got attacked by everything, and it ended up being a shiny Alpha Ralts. I think I'm not very good at this game compared to other Pokemon games, probably because it's now fully an action RPG where you are running around in real time and needing to pick moves and target things. Chaz, who is more familiar with playing Monster Hunter and has played that game quite a bit, without playing this game almost at all, is immediately better at it than me. So So it's hard to say what of my complaints about the game are legitimate problems with it and not just me being bad at it. I honestly kind of think so far almost every character is an improvement over their X and Y counterparts. This is not quite like Legends Arceus where the characters are ancestors of the characters from the Diamond and Pearl games. In this game, the timeline is that this takes place after X and Y, but not too much after. So it's just aged up versions of the same people, more or less. And so half the time I'm trying to like remember who in the original games who is, because I would say X and Y had a lot of interesting characters that you spent a lot of time with, but overall the story wasn't that memorable and there wasn't that much to do in them after you beat the game. So I remember Emma really well, but not a lot of other people. So it's hard to say like who's based on who and what references I should be getting, because I don't think I've played X and Y since they came out. So some of them, like if they're based on a character I remember really well, I get right away. Honestly, I'm actually kind of rushing through the game at this point and trying to just finish as much as I can, because so many new games are coming out that I want to play right now, which never happens to me. There's a new Katamari game that's already out that I haven't started yet because I'm still playing ZA, and I have to finish ZA before everything gets spoiled for me. And then after all of that is done, I have a new Kirby Air Ride on the horizon to look forward to. And we just got Sonic Cross Worlds, which was pretty fun, and there's continually new content being released for that I'm just almost not engaging with at all because I'm too busy playing other stuff. And what's crazy is like right before this, I was just going through NSO and like completing games in that catalog because I had nothing else to play. Why couldn't they space these releases out through the rest of the year? I know that they all have to release right now because people only buy games in December. I would have bought them earlier than December. Why can't they release games on my schedule? So upcoming videos, I have picked back up the essay that I was writing last year. I was writing a Pokemon Health Incidents essay, and I picked it up again this month and improved, or really, I guess, finished a second draft of it that I'm kind of going through. I don't know if I finished it actually. I think I wrote about half of it. Yeah, it still needs a lot of work, and I only have about one day a month really to commit to it at the moment, which really slows down the progress I could be making on anything. It always just kind of feels like I never have enough of myself to give to get anything done. Some days inspiration strikes and I write like 2 or 3 pages before bed, and then that just doesn't happen again for a while. I've been in an outpatient program since August, which I'm being discharged from this week, so hope I have more of my own time back to perhaps commit a little bit more time to working on videos, but I also have to look out after my own health, and that has been a priority lately, so I'm just doing my best like anybody. It is the fall. I tend to want to make stuff in the fall. I guess I just feel a little discouraged because it feels a little bit like I'm running on a treadmill. It feels like I put 100% of my time into everything I do, and I never get any closer to releasing a finished product. And then when I do release it, the algorithm buries it. Not that that matters for Patreon, but I hope by the time I finish anything, people will still be interested in what I have to say. Who knows? Do you like this inflatable bodysuit I'm wearing? This would actually be a really good maternity costume. I'm not pregnant.